another video on the third sign, third house, and there are some interesting astrological correlations in there. It turned out that probably the most inspired part is right at the end when I remembered something, and so I added it at the end of the movie. A well-informed subscriber correctly stated that when it comes to astrological correspondences via planets and/or signs, they can be quite innumerable. And this is something that sometimes vexes people that are trying to study astrology. They can't figure out how subjects that do not appear to be related show up in the same house or sign. But it turns out that it's true, and with enough study, a lot of it makes a lot of sense. Now, when we speak of the third house, third sign, I spoke yesterday about testing and the third sign. And the reason is that it's a data house, Gemini and Mercury. And so you could also point to the fact that mind itself is in that house. And so people that are in data professions, for example, computers, any kind of data analysis, but also salespeople, because it involves communication. It involves the movement of words, literally. And then you have what was mentioned in the comment, which is the idea of nearby transport or nearby trips. So the whole idea of moving around is connected to this house as well. So when you go for a walk, or when you go for a run for that matter, you're connected to this house. And so if Saturn is going to be in the USA third house, third sign, then that is another one of the subjects for sure that we're going to be dealing with over the next several years. And the first interpretation would be to say, well, this would mean restrictions and problems. That's true, but if you look at the upside, you could also say that we would be learning more about this particular activity. And it's the way always Saturn works. With Saturn, you deal with problems, you deal with restrictions, you basically have to work at it. And then the result can be a much better outcome than what was previously the case. And when you think of the third sign and you think of the US, let's face it, we're not at a point in history where communication between people is very good. At the moment, at minimum, there is tremendous polarity, and different sides of the country believe different things. No one hears anyone else. And so it's possible that during these years, this is something that will improve as a result of working at it, maybe even the publishing of data that people start to believe. I don't know. That's harder to identify. But undoubtedly, it's a result that could take place. And the next thing that you could add is that, you see, you can look back at Saturn recently crossing through, this 3 here is a little bit distracting, crossed through the US second. And so not the whole time was a catastrophic economic money factor, which would be the second. That only took place when Saturn was pretty late in the sign. So it's when it caught Mercury in the opposition, but it flew right by Venus, Jupiter, and the Sun. Now then you can get into arguments about the fact that the Trump administration passed a big tax cut that only favored a small group of the population, relatively speaking. Sure, but overall we didn't feel the crunch until later. So you can't necessarily say the whole time is going to be a disaster in a certain area, even in the case where there are planets there. But now if you look at the third, perhaps the crunch could come when Saturn gets to the near the end of the sign, which doesn't happen until late in 22 and into 23. So that's one possibility. But in any case, this was just to point out that this house does have many meanings, and these become really excellent contemplations, I find, with astrology as a point of focus. If you let your mind explore in a kind of associated fashion, you start to connect with a wide variety of meanings. And in fact, I'm sure as I end this video, some more will come to mind. And in fact, I did think of something right away, which is that in 2021, in addition to Saturn going through there, Jupiter will also be going through there the entire year. And this adds an element that is very positive, that points to the potential for some really good outcomes in any or all of those categories that I mentioned, around people relating to one another, around progress in that area, you name it, in that house / sign, things can really improve. At the same time, you notice if you look at the US chart, the planets in early Cancer, Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter rules the US ascendant, which makes it a really important planet, and Venus rules the 6th house, which is the health house. And so Saturn, in its travel through the early part of that sign, that third sign, third house, Aquarius, is making a quincunx aspect, 150 degrees, to those early Cancer planets. And that links it to matters of health, and pretty much is telling you ahead of time that this whole testing, analyzing thing is likely to be in the foreground in 2021. But I would say with Jupiter there, the chances of success dramatically improve. And I would say that's pretty good news.